everybody. I am ready to continue the painting, and I had a couple of questions that came through on my Instagram, I believe, about why I don't change my water more often. And the answer to that is I just change it when I really feel like I need to. So it may look murky, and if it gets where it's tinting the paint too much, I'll change it. And then someone else asked me to show the painting more up close so they could see the washes and other aspects of what I'm doing. So I'm going to show you that next, and we're going to get right to it today. So let me move the camera. Okay. Alright, I'm going to hold this up where you can see this better. These, maybe you can really get a good look at these washes. And obviously everything has dried, and it has dried lighter, just as I said it would. And you can see there's a lot of white space still in between the foliage of the trees. So there's my up close, and somebody else wanted to see the photo up close. Here's one of them, the house. So I'm going to continue to create the shape of the house with what surrounds it, and also eventually some of the shadows will also create the more of the form of the house. So okay, I'm going to go back to my medium-sized brush right now, I think. I've still got some of the green. As you can see with watercolor, you don't throw it away. You're always able to reactivate it, with water, which is a wonderful thing for economy. You're not wasting any of your paint. Even paint that's really, really dry in the palette can be reactivated. So unlike acrylic paint and oil paint, once they're dry, they really are toast, and you have to scrape them off or get rid of them somehow. Watercolor's not that way. You can keep your paint for pretty much forever. So I'm going to use some of the colors I had left and just reactivating them a bit with the water here. Now green is a color that I may have to change my water more frequently. It can really stain the water. So, okay. Now, what I think I want to do first is I've gotten some of the flowers in place. But there's also greenery around the house, and there were some of those places that my friend wanted the white and green and flowers, where I would leave the little white dots for flowers. And here are the irises. Here they are again. Here are these azalea bushes on either side of the doorway, and some of the lavender. Now this was the flame azalea, which is again in this photograph. To reorient ourselves here. Oh, here we go. This one. It's here. So we've got the flame azalea, we've got the smokehouse. There's some irises here. Now while I've got this larger photo more close up, I'm going to use my smaller brush and go on and get in some of the foliage for the irises. So let's see, maybe I'm going to use some of this hooker's green. I'm going to add a little bit of this cad lemon, which is a fairly opaque color, so a little bit goes a long way, and I'm going to dilute that a little bit, make it move around. I'm going to go in and put some of these iris leaves and stems. And there are a few more over here. And I know the shape of an iris leaf. So I'm going to put in a few leaf-like shapes. A couple of darker spots here maybe. And I'm going to let that sit there. Now, the azaleas will have greenery, usually pretty dark. I'm going to take some of that hookers and mix it with some of this darker green I had on the palette. I think it had a little alizarin crimson in it. Add a little bit more. And I'm going to go on and put a little bit of down in here. I don't know what that is. Okay. I dot this in a little bit here. And over here a little bit. Now, the lavender usually has kind of a silvery green foliage. I'm going to use some of this cerulean blue. And touch it with a little bit of this cobalt green. It's very similar in some ways to that Veronese green. And I'm going to use a teeny bit of this, tone that down just a little bit. Add a little bit of that hookers, warm it back up. Okay, I like that. So I don't want it to be too heavy. I'm holding the brush from the end. Okay, a little bit of that there. Now I think those look like maybe they're kind of like hostas along the edge, but I've got to think about how much foliage I'm really going to have, and this vine is here on the house. And it's sort of a yellow green. So I'm going to put some of that in now. Go on and put that in. It's pale, a pale green. And it's going to help define part of this house too. It's on the corner of the house. I'm going to just sort of dot in the shape of that as I see it. She's got a trellis there. And some of this looks like it's sort of going up a little bit. I don't want to get too heavy-handed with that. And always go back and add more. I'm going to put a little bit of the kind of a medium green here, I think. You want to vary your greens, warm and cool, light and dark. And think about the silhouettes of the foliage. Well, that's not quite the color I want. Add a little bit more of this sap, I think. Let's see. Okay, a little bit more of that. Think about the silhouette that you have. I think I'll put a little bit more of that down here, maybe in here. And then this foliage all along here, it's just in the distance, it's going to be a suggestion. It's all along the edge here, defining the edge of the yard. It's going on down this way. Okay. fill some of that up in kind of a pattern of fronds. Okay, I'm going to use some clear water on that too, I believe. It's a little thick. Okay. Now, let's see what other photo I have here. The steps to the house are peeking out. I'm going to use this bigger photo to get those in place. I'm going to, let's see, clean that up just a little bit right there. And I'm going to pull a little bit of this up. I can always add some of this later if I want to make it darker. I don't want it to be too dark. And I also want to, while it's wet, I want to vary that color a little bit. So I'm going to drop in, a little bit of my cobalt violet. And that's a complement. It's an opposite color. So it tones us down. It pushes it back a little bit because we don't want it to be as important and as apparent as the foliage around the flowers and closer to the house. It grays us down just a little bit, and yet it pulls color over here that I've used in other places in the painting. I'm going to get that edge back. I wasn't careful, so I'm going to have to blot that one up a minute, let it dry, and I'll come back in there in a minute and try to get that back. Okay, now the steps. The steps look like they're kind of they're a darkish brownish color. I'm going to start with whatever this is on my palette. I'm going to add some, let's see, some alizarin. Let's see. Oh, there's the alizarin. Okay, nope, that one. I'm going to add a little bit of that. So that's kind of an orangish color, darker bricky orange. And there is an undertone of that in the steps. So I might even start out with that. So let's see what those steps are doing. They are here. And here. And here. Maybe they're peeking there a little bit. Now, I'm going to just let that dry a little bit while I'm working on other things, and I'll define them more later. Okay, so I've got that there, and I like some of these hosta kind of like leaves. I'm going to make them more yellowish. Right here in the front of the house, kind of coming out like that. Put a few right there. Okay, so I'm starting to define the bottom of the house with the foliage. I've got this part of the house outlined, so to speak. And now let's look over here. Another way the house will be defined are by the shadows, because this is all painted white, but here and here, this plane of the house that goes back, this side of the house is less light than the front, even though there's bigger cast shadows. I'm looking for where planes turn, where later cast shadows will really be added. See, all up under here, very deep cast shadows. This is a deep cast shadow, and there may be a few more that I'll see, and some of the clapboard will show up more on the side. But right now, up under here, I don't want to outline this, but I'm going to use kind of a warm shadow here. It looks warm compared to the rest of the white. So I'm going to go on and get that in, and it will help me define that edge of the house. So I think I'll use a little bit of my Aurelian, which is this color. It doesn't look like much. No, that's not Aurelian. Here we are, Aurelian. That's quinacridone gold. So it's very cool. It's too cool. I'm going to add a little Naples. That warms it up, but it's way too thick. So I just need just a touch of this. I think I said before, no matter how thin of a glaze or a mark you make in watercolor, it will show against the white paper. And yellow is a deceiving color. It really dries and stains for the most part. So let's look at the angle of this. Let's look at this. Here's my angle. So here it is. So I'm going to go on and put this in. This edge of the house is just a tiny bit lower than that edge. So again, let me check my angle. I want it to be from here to here about. So I'm just going to put that there. This is just this little edge that looks golden compared to the rest of it. If you compare that part of the white, it's definitely a little more golden. It almost has some pink in it compared to the rest of the White House. So there's that. I'm going to let that set up, and while I've got that color out, I'm going to go on and add it here. And this is a lot of water with a little bit of paint, so that'll take a while to dry. And I see it very apparently back here. I'm going to put it here. And I see it up here. You could call this a shadow, but it's almost reflected light as opposed to a true deep cast shadow. Now the roof here, it may be this gray blue, but it doesn't look that way. I'm going to use a little bit of this on the first pass of that roof. Now I might go back later and add some blue. Now that's a really sharp angle. Let's get that in there. And this is just like a sliver of the top of the roof that we can see. It's a sliver. And that'll be an underglow for that. I'm going to let that dry. And right now, okay, that's all I'm going to do for that. I've got to let that dry. Okay, now, so we've got the azaleas here. We know where the edge of the house is going to be. We know where the edge of the little granary is going to be. And right up on the roof of the granary, you know, you see a lot of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit the barn in. I think that's pushing it. I might have a teeny bit, but I think I may let the barn just be for now. But I'm going to put some of this greenery. It's sort of going up this way, and there's a little bit of a tree. So let's see what I'm going to use for that. That is I'm going to start out with sap over here, sap green, with a little bit of my olive green. I'm also going to tone it down with a little bit of that. Okay, now, let's see. Kind of put it back in here. I don't really know what this is. But I know the green is different from what's in front of it. Okay, and I might touch that with some, prep that up just a little bit. I'm going to add a little of this cerulean into it, or manganese, excuse me. Kind of along the edge there, just to change that up a little bit. And I want a little bit of it on the other side, just to peeking out, coming down and peeking out a little bit right there. Now, let's see. Put a little bit of this here too. And the table is tilting back just a smidge, so I'm going to get something like, just even a pen. Something just to tilt this up just the bittiest bit so it won't. Let's see, maybe something a little bit bigger than that. What have I got? Maybe this thing. This is a bigger pen. Stick that up under here. Just to keep the paint from rolling away. I don't want it to. Okay, I like that. All right. So we're coming along on defining the farmhouse. And okay. Now over here underneath the flame azalea, it's really a lot of greenery, but I want to go in and put in a few little stems or stalks or trunks, whatever you want to call them. Sometimes I use colors that are just like a sludge in the edge of my palette, and I call that color gutter, and it can be very useful just for a good all-purpose neutral. So I'm going to get some of that, and I'm going to go on and put in some trunks for this flame azalea. I told you the people next door have one of these, and I've been looking at it. And I want to break up this whole thing without having too much of the same shape or too many of the same strokes. Okay, now I love that little piece of the pathway that's peeking out back here, and I don't want to forget it. So that was my puddle that had the Aurelian, it had Naples, and now this is quinacridone gold. And I'm going to touch this, let's see, on the edge of this here. I don't know if you can see that picture. Here, there's a little pathway right there. I'm going to go on and get that in there. There you go, just a little bit. And there's also a lot of golden stuff kind of up under here. Indicate that. Too thick, so I'm going to suck a little bit of that up. It's so you can see through it again, and you see the pretty colors bleeding together. I do want it to help define the edge of the smokehouse here, so I'm going to get up next to that and just put a little bit of that gold up under there. Okay. Let's see. Put that right up here. There we go. Okay, now where else can I use some of that? This road, this is the driveway. It comes around and cuts up this way, and this is a little foreshortened, but I do think I'm going to indicate probably a little bit of the road here. And I know it's probably gray, but I'm going to give it a little bit of a golden underglow. It may not stay there forever, but it might. I'm going to do that to indicate the road going by. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to have this curve or not. I think I'm going to see. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to put a little orange in it while it's wet. Give it a little bit of a bump. And this one over here, I'm going to give a couple of little spots. Also, got my orange on my brush. I'm going to indicate some of these irises a little bit more while I can. And I'm going to change that just a little bit with some of that Scarlet Lake for the flame azalea. Let's see. And touch some of those darker areas into it. Let's see. Change that up just a smidgen. A few spots back here. Okay, and I need to get some of that orange again while I have it. And give these irises some more form. Okay. Isn't that pretty, the way that orange blended in right there for the road? Can you see that? I'm going to hold this up closer so you can see it while it's wet. See what it's doing a little bit better. I hope you can see how it's blending in the road. Let's see, there you go. And then here are some of these places with the flowers. Of course, they're wet. And finding places in the painting to use some of the colors I've been using. There you go. They may not be apparently there in reality, but they will be pretty in the painting. Okay, now, so the house is starting to pop out and come forward a little bit more. And I want to get some of this reddish, purplish reddish bush, which is back here, in here before I forget it. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Now, the edge of the house, we want to be careful here. So we want to define the edge of the house with some of this, whatever this is. Okay, I've got a bleed, but I kind of like it. It's putting some green naturally into that pink. Okay, I'm going to leave that like it is for now. While it's wet, I'm going to let it sit. I'm going to get some grassy green going here because I want to put in this part. I guess you can't see that. Let's see. This part of the greenery up in here. So I'm going to use some of my sap green. And it's mixing with some of that, a little bit of that cad orange and whatever else was on the palette. I like that color. Don't want it to be too thick. So I'm going to go in and put this in. Now this land is intersecting the house about up here. And there's some darker little edges and a few darker trees that I'll add. But for now, it's really kind of, the lighter green is right up under the eaves of the house. So I'm going to get that in. I'm going to use it to create the edge of the house here, the wall, right there. Let's see. It also, there's a big tree here, then it has another pass of this field coming here and up. And this is connecting here. Goes right up to the edge of the granary. I'm going to use it to create the edge of the granary as well. I'm going down to the very, as close as I can get to this red without hopefully bumping into it. I don't want a big bleed there if I can help it. In fact, I've got to turn my paper upside down now to do this, to keep from making a mess. Carefully so it won't jump out of its banks. Okay. It's sort of undulating on like this. Now, I might be able to add just a little bit of the barn. I think I'm going to, very neutral, just to suggest it. Okay, so there's a round tree, this tree here, and then the edge of the barn here, and here. It's going off the page. I like that barn. Okay, let's see. Later I'll define some more of that with the dark, the door, and whatever else the boards are doing there. Just going to get it placed. Alright, now, this green intersects the tip of the barn there. I like that. It also goes down here. I'm going to leave a little room for whatever that little tree is there. And it goes out here. Okay. I like to paint to the very edge of my paper. You know, I tore this so I have a decal edge. So when this is mounted and matted, I will float it where you see everything. I think that's a really pretty way to do it. Okay, I've got to make a decision here. I'm looking at two different pictures of the house. This one has this tree out in the middle here, and it also has these darker trees here and here. Do I want this one, on the other hand, only shows this tree. And I'll put this one in now and think about it. Okay, hookers. Little sap. A little olive. Okay. Now, kind of above this little house over this way, it's got a nice little silhouette in the sky. I'm going to put that in there. Let that bleed just a smidge. Let's see, I think I will put these other ones in. And this one, here. And then this one is right up next to the roof. Now I gotta be careful here because I've got that yellow glow that I don't want to mess up and disturb. I'm just going to have that peeping out, but I want the edge to define the house. Now that is a little bit, let's see, I'll let that bleed just a smidge. Now back off in the distance here, there's some little treetops peeking up. Very pretty. Oh no, I held that over there. I've got to get that up. So was gonna do that. Now I've made a big splash. So I've got to pull some of this up. That's okay. Let's see. May have to do some hovering. All right. Now let's get some of that back over here. Some of these little treetops peeking up. Okay. All right, I think I'm going to put some clear water here. Push that back up. I'm going to suck some of this up. Too heavy. Okay. Now, I suck just a little bit of this up. I'm going to use a little bit of water to push some of that paint into that shape. Maybe create a nice little edge. Okay, that's good for now. I'm going to leave that alone for now. I kind of like that little bitty tree sticking up. Just put him in there while I can. There's another one up here. Kind of like those. Okay. So now, every side of the house has been created with what's around it. And that is a really important thing to know about watercolor, especially with lighter shapes and particularly white shapes. So I like to save the sky to the end because it gives me latitude on how dark or how deep I want the sky to be. But one thing that works really well in this photograph, I want to point out to you compositionally. Let's see, make sure you can see it. There you go. These clouds are at an angle this way, so they're pointing to the house. you kind of can come back across the yard with this light and then zig back this way. So it's like a big zigzag that helps your eye move through the painting. And as an artist, you're going to learn to look at the world in a different way. You're looking for design, you're looking for composition and what you can use as far as shapes, colors, values, which is the light and dark in things, lines. What happens in the landscape design-wise to enhance your composition? And sometimes you have to adjust it yourself as the artist. So, okay. Now I like this American flag here. I think I'm going to put that in while I'm able. Now I want to be really judicious about this. I don't want to get too heavy-handed or too particular here. So here's the flag. It's coming up about right here out of the porch rail. And it's not, it's draping down. So I'm going to give just, let's see, a couple of stripes. And there's some coming this way. And then I'm going to put a little bit coming back behind this lavender. Got broken up by the lavender. Then the blue here. And I'm making sort of a grid just to give myself some room to leave some white to suggest the stars. So there you go. Now that's enough. A suggestion of the flag. Now, this part of the house, the foundation, I think it's rocks. It looks like rock color. I'm going to use some of this neutral I have going over here. And I'm going to look at the angle of this too, because this is important. It's tilting down just a smidge. I'm going to get that in there now while I have the chance to do it. Uh-oh, going into the irises. Okay. It's probably enough. Now back here it's maybe elevated just a little bit because the house goes back just a little. Put a little bit of it there. I see a little bit of it peeking in the front here, but it's a lighter color. The sun is hitting it. I'll tone that down. It's out here, kind of peeking through here, just to give an indication of that. Let's see. I might put a little bit in here, even though it doesn't really show. It won't hurt to have it peeking. Okay, so there's some foundation. Let me look here and see what's happening right in here. It's kind of a muddle. I think I'm going to use some pretty green, pretty yellow green, just to give you a little spot of pretty color to look at right there. Let's see. Well, this is kind of a mounded bush. Let's put him in there. Let him peek through. He's kind of a mound. Okay, I like that. Well, where else can I use some of that pretty yellow green? There. Maybe I'm going to use a little bit of it kind of on this part of the vine thing, going up the side of the house. Okay, I'm going to stop now because it's very, very wet. I've got to decide what I'm going to do out here in the front. Well, no, I think I am going to go on one little bit more before I stop for now. I'm going to go on and put some bright, pretty green here. It's a big lawn. It's a big green shape. Scary. But what's going to make that interesting will be the shadows. So this one, look at these different choices that I have. I'm thinking about what I'm going to do later. Okay, I'm going to go on and put in a fairly light, bright green. Let's see. Now she's got foliage in the front of the house up by the road. I may add in some darker suggestions. So for right now, I'm going to get this in. Now this is a scumbling when you don't have a whole lot of water on your brush and you're rubbing it over the surface of the paper fast and you leave some little highlights. That's called scumbling. Can be very pretty. Alright, now down here I'm going to go in and adjust this a little bit because there is she's got foliage down here, darker. I'm going to go in and put that there and leave it. This is when you have to be bold and you have to go for it and leave it alone, and that's not always easy to do. So I'm going to do that. I like that. Let's see, I'm going to put a little blue here in the front. Let's see. Just a little bit. Kind of a bluish green. That's nice. Alright. Now, it's a little garish. I'm going to tone that one down just a teeny bit. Maybe I'll use some of this bluish, this olive in there. Yep. Tone it down just a smidgen. Okay, now later I will use some of that level. Once I kind of see what it does, I can use some of that level green other places, and surely I will. And I also will think about this big shadow. This is really this stuff, the dark green, but there's a shadow cast over the yard, and I've got to decide how I'm going to handle that. Now, I don't want to mess with this much, but I am going to pull back just a little bit of this because I want to be able to preserve some of that lighter area right in front of the house. Not going to let it creep too far there. So, okay, let's see what it's doing. Okay, now what I might do is tilt it up for a few minutes, put this clean water here, let it go down just a smidge into this. I like that. Let's see what I can get it to go down just a little bit more. Tone that down just a little bit. Now, sometimes you don't want to bead. Boy, I let that go. Now, see, there are all kinds of things that happen in watercolor. You just have to, don't panic, you know. Don't panic. After I told you to leave it alone and I'm messing around. Let's tilt this up just a smidgen, just for a few minutes. Let's see. Okay, it's looking okay. Let's see what this is doing down here, though. Get that up a little bit. There we go. Okay. I like that. It looks pretty natural. Now I've just got to let it be, and I'll work with whatever I have once it's dry. Let me get some of that off though. Right through my flowers. That's okay. I can get all that back. Okay. So let's see, what can I tilt? I'm just going to tilt this up a little bit on the back of this photograph. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to tilt the camera up a little bit and see if you can see it. Let's see. There it is over there. And I'll bring it closer to you. But you can see I have it tilted up. So here it comes, hopefully into view. So a lot happened in this painting session. The house is defined. The great big green is on its way. And you can see we've got lots of cool greens, warm greens, a lot of yellow greens, some that have some red blending in, purples blending in. It's not just one big green. So that's the painting for now. I do need to let all that dry. I'm just going to tilt it up very little bit. There we go. Let's see. I wanted to say today, let me get this right. I've been thinking a lot about the language of art, of painting. And I wanted to say to you that really and truly learning to paint is like learning a new language. And if you've ever attempted to learn a second language, you know you probably are going to begin with vocabulary words. And you may even begin with new sounds that are very hard for you to make. And then as time goes by, you might add adjectives and adverbs and prepositions. And eventually you can form a sentence. And if you get really proficient, you might do your verb tenses well. And to become completely fluent would take a lifetime. The painting is the same way. It's a lifetime adventure, and it's a learning a new language. You're learning all about your tools. You're learning about your materials. You're learning to look. You're learning to see design wherever you are and wherever you go. You're learning physically, just like when you're learning to dance or ski or something like that. You've got to amalgamate your physical responses with your thoughts and your emotions and your visual acuity and observations, and get that all going. And then eventually, if you keep at it and you keep working at it, it's like your handwriting. It will become more and more and more particularly yours, and you'll be able to communicate and express yourself more deeply. But it is like learning a language. It is a language. It's a different language, and you are learning it from the ground up. You'll learn some slang and colloquialisms and integrate those into your sentences. So it's a wonderful, incredible experience and journey, lifetime of self-revelation and exploration. So I hope you've enjoyed today. See you later. Bye-bye.